what we're using for the frame for the fuel cell. What it is, super thick steel, drafting table, possibly another filing cabinet, but I think it's a drafting table, pretty thick steel. What I want to do, I want to make a two-piece mount. The first piece encapsulates the back of the fuel cell. It's going to be basically a U. I mean, yeah, an L that's welded down to here to make a U. What it is I'll have the top and the bottom exact size, and then the front will be a detachable mount. The way to put it on will be to put a bolt inside here on the top portion of it, and then draw it down to tighten everything with the bolt here, and then it'll come down like this, and you run the bolt down and it'll just squeeze it tight. That way, no movement. You know, if I have enough steel, I'm going to make a one from here over to there. That way, it's not going to go in. It's one stationary thing, hopefully. So let me get my cutters, and we'll start making this mount first, that mount, and tie them all, and then we'll tie it all together. The fuel tank frame is pretty much there. It's all set. What do we got to do? We have, you know, when we put this in, we got to weld this bottom track to the chassis. That's no problem, you know. And then the frame is pretty good. Then we can slide the fuel cell straight out and straight back in again. But how are we going to lock the fuel cell in? Well, you know what? I thought I was going to use more of this, but I'm not. I got a fakery, a little bit of a fakery to go on. What it is that I am going to weld this right here is just a standard tab with a nut cert on the back or a nut welded on the back. I don't know, it's from something. But I'm going to weld it right there so it accepts a M6 bolt. And what do we have right here? We have shear force. It doesn't need very much, you know, to be pretty strong. Now down here, we have to angle it at a 90-degree angle to bolt it straight in. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. I'm going to be using an M8 bolt down on the bottom because of the forces it uses. It's a lot greater, you know. And other than just this, it's this, you know, because you're screwing it down inside something. Now, what am I going to use? Well, you guessed it. Eurovan parts. This is from the split fold down. And what it is the reason why I'm using it, A, it's pretty thick. It has a hole drilled for an M6 on the top, which is great. But it has Audi part numbers right here. which I'm going to leave on the outside of this, and then bend it down to bring it into the chassis, but I want the part numbers right there, so it looks like they're actually real. It's like, you know what? He must have bought that. It's like, no, you bastard. Like, I'm some hillbilly to cut up a stupid seat. All right, well, I thought that was funny. Let me I'm going to clean this up, tack this in, and then I'm going to take this apart and just lightly trim it so we can put it back in there, and let's see how we can make this thing fit with the mounts right there, because that's going to be the million-dollar question. So let me just tack these on, and I'm going to take this apart, and we will put this back in the car, and let's make it all work. What we have here is when I used a big old honking hammer to smash this in order to get the fuel tank in. And I knew I was going to be fixing it eventually. And you have to do it before I put it on the rotisserie. So what it is I'm going to be cutting this, and I have some really thick plate I'll show you. I got it from the drafting table. And what I'm going to do, it's going to do two things. First thing, it will increase the distance in between the two strut towers by taking out this curved metal. And also, that curved metal, when I banged it in, it went from curved here to curved there. So it decreased the amount of airspace or amount of room we have in the actual strut tower. So having a straight plate in there, it's going to serve us better on both fronts. We're not going to be using 5-inch springs like the stock ones are. We're using 3-inch, roughly, 3.5. And when we do that, we need as much space because we're not using like 2.5. Which is, you got, twice the room. But let me cut that in, and also, what we're going to do with this is, seeing how we're putting in a plate in here, we're going to bring this plate up and tie it into the roll cage. And people will say, wow, that was a great idea. It looks like you meant to tie the roll cage. No. But if they want to believe that, hey, I think it's a win-win. So let me show you, let me show you the plate, and I'm going to cut it up and start, I'm going to cut this up, then I'll cut the plate and do all this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm winging it. All right, let me show you what I got. This is our recycling material. You're probably saying, what is it? It's the base to a drafting table. What it is, it's super, super thick metal, because you have to remember the drafting table is a couple 100 pounds. It's at least, because man, when I tried to pick it up, it was horrible. What it is with the top and all that stuff and the electric motors and blah, blah, blah. So it has to be really thick steel, which it is. What we have here, using my gauge plate, my gauge indicator, is 14 gauge steel. What it is it's right below 1/8 inch plate. You know what? I kind of would want 1/8 inch plate in there if I had any, but I don't have any. Seeing how I don't have any, next thing, if I have this, 1/8 inch plate is not very much bigger than 14 gauge. So what we got to do is I'm going to cut this out. Make sure there's such a small section I'm cutting out of that. Then I'm going to bring it up to the roll cage and I'm going to wrap it around and go back down into the tower. So it's almost like a double skin type thing. Where it comes up like this, it's tied onto the roll cage, and this is all one stationary unit. I think it's going to work pretty good. Let me get my cutters out and we'll start cutting up the strut towers to see exactly what we need, and then we're going to try and do it both sides as equal as we can. You're probably wondering what the thickness of the metal was in the strut tower. Well, so was I. Because, yeah, I'm always sitting there going, geez, it's 14 gauge. I mean, it's thick steel because, almost all body panels are like 22 gauge, sometimes 24, depending on what they are. And you're looking at going, geez, am I gonna, is it gonna be a presenter problem? Because in the back of my mind, for the most part, it never will, but in the back of my mind, I wanted to make sure. So what I do, I grab one of these, I grab my gauge right here for metal, 14 gauge, right on the money, you know? So that's pretty much it. Now you know if you have to do your strut towers, just grab 14 gauge and it should be good. Whether or not this is case hardened or treated or blah 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 whatever, I don't know. But I would not think so. But who am I to tell? Let me cut up a bunch of plates right here so I can get this thing in there, set up, cleaned, and get it ready to start welding or start welding everything onto it and just making it presentable at this point. There you go. So let me get on to this. That's pretty much fitted. Let's go do the other side. Well, better to be lucky than good. Right. Let me make the mounts for to attach this to that. What I'm going to use is, where is it? Right here. This is the front frame rail that the bumper bolted into. There's two 8x125 nutserts right there. Cut it in half. Cut this off. I'm just going to relief cut it so I can bend it. What's going to happen is I'm going to have it at an angle. Part of this will be to block the rubber from coming out when you slide the fuel cell out. And the other stuff is to lock it in. So let me just cut this up and I'll make it work. All right, what we got to do, we have two more things to put in the car to make it run, or the subsystems in there. The electrical power, battery box. and the fuel system, fuel pump assembly, because we got to be able to run the lines. Fuel cell looks pretty good. I have a feeling I got to do one more thing to the fuel cell frame. I think I have to tie the top in. Don't know yet. I'll take a look at that here in just a second. But the first thing is I want to get the fuel pump and the battery box in. Let's get that in, and then we'll figure out where to go from there. All right, first thing, fuel pump assembly. Well, this is the fuel pump setup originally from the Coupe GT that was the donor for the top half of the car. This right here is a heat shield from a Merkur XR4 Ti to protect the battery from the heat from the turbocharger. Piece of roll cage tubing that I chopped out of something. Don't know what, but I chopped out of something. That's the fuel system. This is going to be the battery box. What is it? Standard Mark III. I just have to trim it up to make it fit. That's it. You know. But let's first do the fuel pumps. Let me show you what I'm thinking about doing on that. All right. This is the fuel system to an Audi. At least it's say yes. What it is that you have a pre-pump filter. What this does is just gets the big stuff out of the fuel going into the external pump. External pump pushes through your fuel accumulator. The fuel accumulator goes back in and goes into the fuel filter. The fuel filter goes to the front of the car, and everything works, in theory. It's like, okay, all right, what's happening here? Okay, what's happening here is that the fuel pump runs through the fuel accumulator, goes through the fuel filter, goes to the fuel pressure, goes to the top of the fuel, or goes to the fuel distributor. And the fuel distributor's pressure regulator basically increases pressure in the system. And let's say it goes to 50 psi. Well, what happens is the fuel pressure or fuel accumulator, there's a spring inside here, and the diaphragm pushes down so it accumulates, so it'll maintain a 50 psi pressure. But when it goes down to 30 psi, it'll maintain 30 psi. That's the whole thing, you know? But the whole thing is it has like a little volume of fuel in here to keep pressure on the system. So when you go to start it, on a CIS car, I don't remember if you hear the fuel pump or not, but when you go to start it, that instantaneous point between where the fuel pump doesn't run and the cold start valve or the cold start injector opens, this accumulator pushes that fuel through the fuel injector to make the thing start. Then everything catches up and just repeats the cycles. Rinse and repeat. What we're going to do is we're going to take this system and put it on this heat shield for the Merkur battery. Now, what I want to do is, in one of the iterations, I'm going to keep the fuel accumulator because I've never run a Digifon system, and I don't know if they have a prime set up for their fuel pumps. And I didn't see anything, so I'm going to keep this. I am going to set it all up, and if I don't ever need this, I'm going to replace it with a second fuel pump, is what I'm going to do. The factories had second fuel pumps. And also, all you carburetor guys out there, I made a comment on Uncle Tony's Garage, saying this might help you guys from your vapor locks. This, I don't know, it's old technology, but man, I think it's newer technology than a carburetor, but I think this might work for you guys. But looking in my mind going, oh, I think you need a second float bowl, or a fuel accumulator bowl. That's kind of the deal there. I don't really know too much about carbs, so the first thing is I got to take this apart, and then we're going to figure out exactly how we're going to fit the components up, and just make it look really neat for one thing, and then figure out how we can set it in there. Actually, I know I'm going to set it in there, and that we can have it suspended, so just in case I do get a hit, you have the floor pan and this protecting the fuel pumps. At least that's what my theory is. Let's see if it'll work. Well, we kind of lucked out. Oh, also, what I should tell you, right here, this is a spring-loaded back pressure valve. You'll see that right like that. What happens is the fuel comes out here, but it's spring-loaded. So when the fuel shuts off, it won't go back in, go through the pump and back into the tank. When these things failed, this pressure canister pushes fuel all the way back into the tank. That's one little thing that you might be considering. Now, if you take a look at this, this is the standard fuel pump mount right here. Fits right there. We have just enough room to put it right there. So I have to drill the hole like there. Then I will have the fuel pressure, the canister, or the, how can I put this, the accumulator right here. I am going to shorten this line, take this fitting, put it onto here, and put it right there. So that way they're right next to each other, they're really close, and we can get right at them. Then we have enough room to put our fuel filter right there. Same thing, I'm going to shorten this line to have this fitting go onto here. And that way it comes right out. So it'll come in, the fuel will come in like here, over, and out like this. So we know we're going to have our fuel line over on this side, not on this side. At least that's what the, I think it's going to do. It looks good. So, and we'll bend this tab up, and then we'll go weld in some mounts and make it all work. At that straight, we run into our first problem. Well, it's not really a problem. See this? Has to go here. I found these in the bin. They're just some spacers or whatever, you know, and that's the way it's going to be. You know, nothing fancy, no problem, just like that. Here it is roughly where it is. I think it's kind of cool, you know, everything's right there. Got to do a little bit of trimming, maybe a little bit, but this is as far as I can go. The first thing I want to do is let's put this in its final position where it's going to be in the car. That's the best thing. So let's go over to the car, put this in, and let me show you what I'm going to do with it. This is where I pretty much want it to set. We have our pre-filter right here. And where's the arrow? The arrow is right here pointing this way. This tab right here, I can bring it off right here and have a mount like this. It's underneath, or it's actually on parallel like there. This thing will go right up inside there. Now, what I want to do is put a mount in between here to bolt this to it. What am I going to use? Remember these mounts I took off of here? They look just about long enough. And then I'll have an M8 stud there. I have this, which I'm going to put down here, which I'm going to use the other side, the other M8 stud down there. I think it's going to work. So let me get my stuff on. We'll cut this up, cut that up, and mount it all in. All right, this is the Mark III battery box from Jetta. I like them. I think they're great because you have the lip right here and you have the bolt down right there. You can bolt it in and it fits a lot of batteries because you can actually adjust them a lot actually, you know, so it's pretty good. All right, how we're going to do it, we're going to bolt it, we're going to make some mounts onto the chassis. They're going to bolt this thing onto. We're going to use 3 M8 bolts. What are we going to use for mounts off of the chassis to bolt in? This thing right here, this came off of the front of the 5+5 for the Sport Quattro. I believe it's for the air filter mount. I can't remember exactly, but I think that is. This is off the other half of the fuel tank mount that we cut up to mount the fuel pump assembly. And this right here is half of an isolator. What it is that when an isolator, you know, like holding the radiator in, when the isolator breaks, it's usually like this. One side goes off. And the thing is, it was on there, so I pulled it off and said, you know what, that'd be kind of cool. So I'm just going to clean this off. It's metal. I am going to use a nut, bolt it on, and on the bottom, I'm just going to weld it. And that way it's not going anywhere, and there's tons of surface area. It won't pull through. That's kind of my deal. All right, let me start. I cleaned up that already, and let me bring it over there. I'm going to clean this stuff up so it conforms to the box right here, and we will put the battery box in. You know, I think it looks kind of neat. Well, I think we're going to come to an end for this episode because looking at all the video, as normal, I ran long. But I got a lot done. What it is I have the pipes all in here. I have the center tow hook, the spare tire mount, but I haven't figured out how I'm going to attach the spare tire yet. I got the cutout right here. The fuel cell or the fuel tank is pretty much in. I might have to adjust some of these mounts. I'm not sure. I cut the plates. I have not put them in yet because I'm going to save that for next time. Next time is cleaning up all this stuff. As you can see, I got one tack there, one tack there, one tack there. The reason is because I can cut it off, I can take it apart, weld underneath everything there, and then put it all back in. And it's all in step because, you know, I don't have a kit to put this stuff in. And I also have to weld the nuts on the bottom of the tow hook slash trailer hitch if I'm ever going to use it like that. And I got to clean up all of this stuff. I got to clean up the holes. I got to clean up this patch. I got to clean up these things. I have to clean up an awful lot of stuff. So I'm going to wait till that because I got to do the entire bulkhead. All this cleanup will be next episode because that's what's going to have to make it look halfway decent. Yeah, hopefully the episode didn't run too long, but you know, I'm kind of like this. I mean, I like the fuel pump because the thing is, the fuel pump comes in here, comes out here. All the lines will be on this side. All the electrical will be on this side, you know? And I'm probably going to not utilize this pump, but I'll probably have a quick disconnect plug so I can disconnect, you know, 2 bolts and pull the entire assembly out if I need to. Hopefully I'll never have to. But, you know, when you say never, it always happens. Other than that, hey, thanks a lot for showing up. I really appreciate it. You know, I mean, next episode, hopefully we're going to finish up, you know, the tanks and all that stuff because I got to do other stuff in order to get other things done because you've seen it's all give and take. I got to do one thing to go to another to come back to another to see how it works. And that's what you guys are going to have to do too because remember, you guys can do this. I'm nothing special. I'm just a hillbilly out here in New Hampshire. And trying to throw a bunch of shit together. So, I know. All right. Thank you very much for showing up. I really appreciate it. You know, hope to see you next time. All right. It's getting there. It's getting there. You know, we got good crash protection for the fuel tank and for the fuel pump. Same for the battery. But, all right, we'll talk to you in a bit. Bye now.